Yo, Scrawny with the Skinny, back at it with the Fantasy Land, and it's the America's RMR. The very last spots at the PGL CS2 Copenhagen Major are on the line, and they're up for grabs to us, the Americans. NASA doesn't damn well matter. This is the America's RMR, where blood will be shed. Brazil versus NA. Get ready for it. This may be the death of Fantasyland. I might be washed. Another handful of junk. From the EU RMR B, I finished in the top 59%. My gamble here with the Hades Tesses decision, Ents and Heroics still succeeded as teams, but these two individuals did not play as well as I would have hoped, even if they had gotten as many points as, say, Boomich did with Cloud9. Obviously, Cloud9 sweeping. Yeah, man, missed the mark. So Hades had some really rough games that ended up losing him points versus some of his great carries. He was super hot or cold, and Tesses was just disappointing through and through. So where does that leave us? Well, folks, I am not even on the list until you scroll down. I am losing to Steel. It is his first season of Fantasy. He didn't even play the first game, and yet I still have less points than him. The end of Fantasyland is nigh. It's okay. I'm not sweating it too much. The gap between myself and fifth being the worst place I have ever finished in a season of Celebrity Fantasy since beginning this endeavor. Never worse than fifth. That is my standard. That is my promise. That is my guarantee until it is no longer true. And it's 48 points to Banks, 34 to myself, 14 points, one good for 1% finish, and your boy's right back at it. We've forgotten about these dark, trying times. So stay with me, folks. We'll get there. I promise. My predictions for the America's RMR. One thing to note with the America's RMR, unlike EU, where not only do you get a last chance qualifier, but you also get 3 losses before you're eliminated. Over here in the Americas, it's cutthroat. We've got limited spots with only 5 available to move on to Copenhagen, and additionally 2 losses, you're out. That's right, 2 losses, a single best of 3 loss, and you are gone. All right, you don't get that fluffy, easy opening day of double best of ones. Nah, bro. You go down to the 0-1 group and you're out of here. So I think opening games are actually very important in terms of just your predictions and, of course, your fantasy draft. Keep your eye on the opening games. Speaking of opening games, I'm coming out swinging. Upset on the cards. Nouns will beat Furia in the first game of the RMR because Furia in 2024 have not looked as good as you would have hoped. They finished 23 with their trophy lift for K Serrato. My God, a never before seen scene. And then it's all been downhill since. Now, luckily for Furia, Fallen and Cello looking good. Yuri looking mid. Art struggling in the last month. And K Serrato no longer the god that he once was. Now, of course, when we go to the Americas RMR, dude, there's one thing you can count on. Furia qualifying for the major. European players banking easy HLTV rating versus our region. And, of course, the holy trinity of Furia, Complexity, and Team Liquid guaranteeing spots at the major. I'll stand by that. Those 3 teams are going to Copenhagen. The question is always, who goes with them? Those 2 other spots. Now, last time, it was Fluxo, and it was Pain Gaming. Pain, a year ago, was excellent. They had Skulls and Zevi, they had Biguzera, and they were looking like the best team in Brazil until that best of 3 versus Furia to decide the legend spot, and then the implosion that ended up happening after the major. So Pain Gaming are a pretty irrelevant piece or player in the space now. That means 2 spots open. I'm just going to come up swinging here. I'm going to tell you who's going to make it. One of the 2 teams to move with those golden 3 is Nouns. I think that it is easy to put stock in Nouns because of all the contenders between Brazil or North America on this list. I would put them on par or just ahead of MIBR. Those are the 2 teams that I think move on with Liquid, Complexity, and Furia. Liquid, Complexity, Furia, Nouns, MIBR. That's my prediction. Let's go through the opening games. Let's go through these just to kind of, put the red flags on the play. We're tiptoeing through a minefield. Head-to-heads and matchups can get a little weird. And with this specific exact run that I have made, which I could most certainly be wrong about because, again, Tier 2 Brazil, bro, what the hell do I know? You think I'm paying attention? Not that closely. Nouns will beat Furia. Complexity get Elevate. Elevate, I'm writing them off. This is a team that's coming in without their highest rated player, India. His passport got stolen or some baloney. Elevate, they're gone. Boss, I'm sorry. I don't see them getting much further. So MIBR Complexity right there on the heels of Noun. I'm going to take M80 over Audic. I think that even with Def inside of the server, he shouldn't be too much of an anchor because the level of play has now diminished compared to Katowice to now the Americas RMR. And additionally, he knows he was going to be playing in this event. And additionally, I think that what we got in Kato was evidence that it's not just about Malbs. And it doesn't need to be Swisher. Rek and Slacks both had good Katos, and those Katos proved to me that the floor of M80 is actually a little higher than I thought it was. Again, unfortunate with Def, but I don't think it's enough to write them off versus Audic and the bottom end of the South American teams. Legacy over Pain. These next matches, until we get to the end, are a little harder to call. Again, these 4 teams in Pain, Legacy, Red Canids, and Wildcard. I guess Wildcard's not South American, but again, it's just kind of like they're a step behind even all the NA teams. It's going to get messy. It's going to change the outcomes of these predictions, etc. But I'm going Legacy because I like Dumao and Lotto still. And I think that Cold Zero's got something to offer. And if Nekaz is the lowest rated player on that team, that's not an awful roster. Wildcard will beat Red Canids because Stanislaw is simply better. Team Liquid will not lose their opening game. They will defeat Bestia. Imperial versus NRG is a bit of a coin toss for me just because I haven't had eyes on Imperial. And NRG, I think that, all it's going to take is 1 or 2 players to have one of their best games, and a best of 1 is not out of the realm of possibility, but I'll still take Imperial because I think that Phelps and Henny have got it. They've got what it takes. Liquid versus Cole in a best of 1. This is a tough one, dude. I think that could legitimately go either way. It's another game where, if Grim has one, or if Floppy has one, or if Halzerk has one, then suddenly, Liquid are not impervious to defeat here, especially in BO1s. We've seen them kind of getting closer games than you'd like to see for Liquid if we are really going to take them seriously as contenders once Copenhagen comes around. Will they make Legends? Could they go to playoffs? These were questions we were really considering a few months ago, and now all of that seems a little on the rocks. So I'm going to take Liquid in this best of 1 regardless. I'll do MIBR over Wildcard, M80 over Legacy, and Nouns beat Imperial. That means Nouns and MIBR both find themselves in the 2-0 group. Not to mention, I've got M80 in there. These 3 teams are snagging a spot, right? If Furia ends up winning instead of Nouns, which is something that I think is very possible, but also I'm going against, then it's Furia versus Liquid. Complexity gets the easier pass. Then it's Complexity, MIBR, Furia, M80. Again, 3 of the teams that we are predicting to qualify, all sitting pretty in a 2-0 start. So Nouns is where we switch back to, though. In terms of 0-1 games, Furia beat NRG, Pain over Audic, Red Canids over Boss, Bestia beat Elevate. I think that Boss and Elevate are unfortunately going home real quick, along with Audic and NRG, if they do indeed get Furia as their opposition. When it comes to the 2-0 games, Nouns going to beat M80. Again, of the teams from NA, I'm putting it on Nouns. Behind Liquid and Complexity, it's Nouns. And then it's M80. And then it's Wildcard. Liquid will take it over MIBR. Legacy go on alongside a Wildcard, Furia, Complexity, and this is where things get weird. If all of these matches go exactly as I predict, then Wildcard versus M80, MIBR versus Legacy, but what is this? Furia and Cole, only one can make the major? Very unlikely that it all goes this exact way, but that's where we're sitting in my mind. And Complexity take it, Furia miss the major. See ya! Let's go through the players list. I'm going to not even talk about some teams here, but I do want to talk about teams just in general. Things you can consider a guaranteed when it comes to the Americas RMR. EU players farming rating. And in-game leaders having one of their best events of the year. This is where in-game leaders like JT, like Cadian, like Fallen can show up and just steal a little rating. Overall, their overall year-long stats are always buffed by the America's RMR. All right? Keep that in mind. So when you look at complexity, I think right now Elige is not worth $230,000. His Katowice was subpar in comparison to that price point. And if you're going to go anywhere with complexity, I suggest Halzerk. JT for the price, very affordable in the top teams expected to go on. Floppy's looking a little shaky as well, so I'm leaning here. Halzerk, Grim, JT, those are the three pieces I'd work with. Furia? Well, Furia have fallen, playing well as of late, and Art has been struggling. Now, you go back like 2 months, 2.5 months, inverse those. It was Fallen struggling while Art was posting rating. I think right now I'm avoiding Yuri. If I was to do anything here, you could go all in on Quesarado because I do think he could farm this. If you really have that much faith in Furia over Cole, over MIBR, over Liquid, go for Quesarado, right? I think at 223, he's proven it time and time again that he could very well be worth it. But it is expensive, and there's no real cheap point on Furia because I would avoid Art and I'd avoid Yuri. The three players I'd recommend from Furia interchangeably, Fallen, Cello, Quesarado. In MIBR's case, all right, if you're really feeling that the South Americans have an edge, then I would say Exit. Exit comes in and cleans up. Go back to the Blast America's RMR. Check Exit's performances. I think Exit is somebody we don't really talk about. You know, when I look at this team, you instantly think Insani. Hell, Drop has proven that beyond his struggles in Furia, both obviously Safe and Drop have a lot of experience from that Furia time. Both of them have looked better since. Safe a little bit less so, but, you know, Drop is a viable option. Exit's a viable option. And I would say Safe over Insani just because of the price point. If you're looking at MIBR, these three interchangeably. Team Liquid. NAF, baby. Ooh! Consistent as ever and at the same price as Quesarado. I think you could push for him. I would go, personally, NAF, Cadian, and Skulls. That's right. Skulls right now, looking at Team Liquid's recent games, it looks like we've got a very interchangeable trio or 4-player core here between NAF, Twist, Ykinder, and Skulls. NAF is hands down the most consistent, but I believe in Skulls. And I am going back 1 year. I know a lot of things have changed in the last year, but I'm almost paying homage to the America's RMR by remembering that it is a very isolated event and that there are parallels to be drawn from one America's RMR to the next. Yes, a lot of time has gone by. Who was the #1 rated player of the America's RMR when it was the Blast Paris Major? The answer is Skulls. Skulls was the highest rated player, something like a 1.4 rating back when he was playing with Pain. And again, that was when Pain were looking like the first or second best team in SA. Now he's looking to be on Liquid, where, again, I think he's going to come into his groove. Second LAN with the team. They had Kato off. They've been practicing. Skulls, Cadian, or NAF. Those are the three pieces I would recommend from Liquid just because... honestly, I could even call Twists a recommendation here. Honestly, sorry for yelling. You could pick any player on Liquid, okay? Even Ykinder's going to come in and farm. It's the NARMR. He's European. That's the solution. After that, we've got Rec at 195. Recommendable. Henny? Yes, sir. Definitely worth your 203. You know who's somebody I really want to keep in because, again, obviously I'm rating nouns in this run. Somebody that I'd really like to include in my draft was George. I think that, unfortunately, I couldn't crunch the numbers. I was like 2K shy of getting the boy. I want George Snorts on my roster. I think George is going to be one of the leading factors to why nouns will qualify for Copenhagen. It will be George and Junior and CJ the King coming through for the nouns camp. Beyond that, you know, I was considering Stanislaw as an eco pick at 180. I think that Wildcard do genuinely have a chance at getting a couple map wins under their belt. I was even looking at Nekiz at 175. If you're looking for an eco pick, these are the two options that I recommend. Nekiz of Legacy or your boy Stanislaw of Wildcard. Beyond that, the next most affordable players you're really working with are indeed JT at 190 or Cadian 197. So in terms of very cheap picks, it's a little risky. And I remember last America's RMR, I got burned by picking an incredibly cheap player from Cold Zera's core. And so I can't let that happen twice, even though I was very tempted by Nekes, and I do think that his experience will come through, proving his value in contrast to a 175 price point. I just can't run the risk. I'm not going to get burned 2 years in a row. And so I'm left with this, the Corn Dogs. Skulls and Cadian from Team Liquid, Halzerk and JT of Complexity, and Junior of Nouns. That's right, 3 oppers. I did it. I think, again, with this, it leaves a little to be desired. I would have loved to have replaced Cadian with somebody like Twists instead, to be honest. Originally, I was also running a draft that was Twists, Skulls, Halzerk, Nekes, and Henny. Or you could drop JT. Yeah, watch this one. If I'm not mistaken, if you really want to run Nekes, right, which is... it's a play, folks. You go Twists, Skulls, George, Halzerk. You get rid of JT, who would have been an easy point farmer. Oh, what's that? You're 174K, and Nekes is sitting at 175. So I just couldn't find a way to crunch the numbers. The only way to do that is, again, the same sacrifice that I've made in the team that I committed to. You go Junior instead of George with the faith in Nouns. Then you've got way more money piled up on top of Liquid. You've replaced Cadian with Twist, who is certainly going to get more rating. You're not doubling down on Complexity if you have that doubt. But then again, you have Nekes as your 5th. So ball's in your court. Them's the Corn Dogs. Catch you guys soon. Fingers crossed we get a goddamn good result, huh? Send me your energy. See you guys soon.